Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome live to Apex Racing TV for round 3 of the Asetek SimSports GT Challenge here at Snetterton, brought to you by FindingSpeed.com. Snetterton was built on an RAF airbase designated for use by the 96th US Air Force Bomber Group between May 1943 and November 1948. The circuit itself was created in 1951 from the network of Romanian runways, and its first race event was held the same year by the Aston Martin Owner Club. The circuit configuration has changed several times during Snetterton's 60-year history. The latest change came in 2011, designed by circuit boss Jonathan Palmer. The 300 circuits takes inspiration from a number of world-leading motor racing venues. The circuit blends a challenging and complex layout with fast straights to create the unique challenge. The circuit's corners are named from some of motorsport's greats, from two-wheeled legend Guillermo Agostini to current F1 superstar Lewis Hamilton, while Wilson is named in honour of Palmer's former protege, Justin Wilson, who was killed in the US in 2005. I am Andy Thompson. I am joined in the commentary booth by Sebastian Bosch at Williams, and in production we have Samuli Kumo. So welcome, Seb. Welcome to round 3 of this Asetek GT Challenge, and it should be an interesting one.
It should be. Thank you very much for having me. Good evening to everybody at home tuning in, as you're right, for round 3 of the Finding Speed League. I'm really excited to be here. Love a good bit of GT3 action, especially around Snetterton. You don't really see it that much on the iRacing official calendar anymore, so it's really nice to be visiting the Norfolk circuit. Cannot wait to get this race underway. Practice. Still got about 2 minutes left to go. Looks like Patrick Gannon is continuing from where he left off. Andy, only 1 week ago at Donington. I mean, he's got the pace. He's really mastered these sort of tricky circuits like Donington and Snetterton. To me, share mostly the same characteristics, and he just seems to be absolutely flying at the moment.
Yeah, certainly does. Obviously came second place in Donington to our championship leader, Lorenzo, who's not here tonight, so he's got a really good opportunity to close that gap. While we're talking about the points, let's have a quick look at them on screen. So let's have a look at our pro standings. So Lorenzo Hodsing, who's not here today from Colwyn Gaming, on 44 points. His teammate, Tim Ruckely, again, not here tonight to join us on 38. Patrick Gannon in third place, as we just mentioned in there. Currently topping the practice standings with a 144.38. So has a real opportunity to close that gap and even possibly take the lead in the championship with a good result here tonight. Scott Rister in fourth, Chris Van Der Nesse in fifth, Alex Craner in sixth, Chris Gooch, Paul Collishaw, Nathan Richardson and Adam Hedgecock round out your top 10 in the pro standings. In the amateur standings, it was all David Chadwick after the first round and an exceptional run, but bit of a disaster for the majority of the field in the AM standings out in Donington. All but Mika Gesseris spun at that circuit, and Mika really took full advantage of that, and we can see him at the top of the standings at the moment with 35 points. David Hart on his heels with 29. Glenn Hopkins there in third on 24th. So Matt and Phil Regan, Jonathan Acaso, Baron Glover, Corey McGrath, Keith McGrath and Alan Mystic round out your top 10 in the amateurs. And there we go. So we're just getting to the end of the practice now. So we'll go into the qualifying session. The qualifying is a solo qualifying, 3 laps only, and 10 minutes to do it. So we'll pretty much see all the laps flooding in, then a little bit of quiet, but that gives us a good opportunity, Seb, to talk about this track. Like you said, it's one of these tracks that's not really familiar on iRacing, but it's got very much the same characteristics as Donington Park. A very tricky circuit, and the circuit actually invites you to just maybe push the car a little bit too much. So I'm expecting to see some spins around certain corners, certainly around the hairpin at Montreal at turn number 2. Augustini, turn number 4, is always another one that you find cars spin off, and Hamilton, turn 5. So that infield section of this 300 circuit is really going to be challenging to the drivers.
It certainly is, and yeah, I mean, just to complicate it, as we've been saying, not many drivers would have had that much experience around this track. So, you know, while I say Donington is more commonly used in any of the iRacing or even league series, you've got some idea of you know, how to race around there. Snetterton is very much going into the unknown, so it's going to be really tricky for the drivers, especially, you know, as you mentioned, in the mid section of the lap, where it's so difficult, and it's going to be difficult, especially if you're in traffic. That dirty air coming off the car ahead going to be really detrimental to your peak grip and your peak performance. So it's going to be really, really interesting. Of course, we've got the pit stop as well. That's going to add a little bit more spice into the race if this race needed any at all. I'm really, really looking forward to this one. We see Phil Regan just coming on to the Bentley straight down towards Brundle Corner, and everything now for the drivers is going to be about warming up the car. They've got to get the tyres in the right temperature, the brakes in the right window. They've got to make sure that when they head down the centre straight into Riches into turn 1, they've got the temperatures as good as they want them, because you mentioned they've only got 3 laps to do qualifying. It's not that many laps, so they really need to perfect every single lap if they want a good starting position.
Certainly do. And Samuli, I'll give you a little bit of a challenge. Let's see if we can pick up a car that's starting this lap. What do you feel will be quite a good one to just see the driver's eye view of a lap around here, Snetterton? Probably a lot of our viewers haven't really seen this track, so bit of a straight here up to turn number 1. It's a 4th gear corner, but what they really need to watch out for is there's a kink just there on the inside of the corner. If they clip that, then they could lose the front end of their car, and we might see a few cars spinning. Coming up here into turn number 2, Montreal. It's a really tight first gear. A hairpin coming down here into Palmer Corner. Turn number 3 is a 3rd gear corner all the way around. You can't really get on the power too early, but you'll see a lot of the drivers using the mesh on the outside of the track. So this is Augustini. This is a one that really invites you in to try and go too far, but you really need to be cautious of where you're putting the brakes on at that corner. Coming down into Hamilton turn, don't really want to be clipping the inside of this corner too much. To try and get a really good exit out. And this one here is probably the prime one for getting the slowdown. You do not want to be cutting that inside corner far too much there. Coming down into turn number 8, Williams onto the Bentley straight. Really important that you get a good exit out of here using all the track on the left hand side, as we saw Phil there, pretty conservative coming down here down to the Bentley straight. And then we come into the first of what would be the sort of like a chicane coming into Brundle, coming down into Nelson's corner. You need to really watch that corner exactly there, Phil. You don't want to be hitting that sausage on the inside. Really treacherous. Coming down to the bomb hole. Yeah, we will maybe give you an explanation why that's called the bomb hole later on, or see if anybody can find out. But we're coming around the last corner here, a really long corner, but you really need to stay over to the right hand side. Again, there's a savage sausage on the inside of the last corner, turn 13 Murray's, that can obviously unsaddle the car. And that is a lap around here at Snetterton, and really done a lot on that time. He must have gotten off track there. So them pesky off tracks will put pay to a lot of guys' times around here as well. So unfortunately, Phil didn't set a time there, so there's only 2 laps to get one in.
Yeah, Regan, I think it took a bit of time to come up, but yeah, I mean, not finding the pace that he would have wanted, 1.5 seconds off Van der Ness at the top of the timing stands is Phil Regan. So hopefully on his second lap he can use that confidence that he would have got from his first outing to see if he can find a little bit more time around the lap. As I said, Van der Ness to the top of the timing stands. 1 minute 44.452 is your pole position time. No, those Mercedes, Andy, are looking so strong, aren't they, at the moment? I mean, in practice, the top 5 were made out of the Mercedes, and it just seems at the moment that this is the car to beat.
Yeah, it certainly is. It is a car of choice in the majority of the GT championships, but luckily we've got a little splattering of other cars to throw in the mix. That's one there in 4th place at the moment in the Porsche, and a Casino there in the BMW as well. And we've got a couple of Ferraris, but unfortunately no McLarens again. Nobody venturing out into the wonderful McLaren, but yeah, we certainly do have the Mercedes there taking the top 4 at the moment in the standings. And that time from Chris Van der Ness is rapid, a 144.45. He only done a 145 in practice, so has really brought out the big guns here for his qualifying session, and currently stands in P1 with Paul Gannon just behind him, 0.2 of a second.
Here's Gannon choosing to come into the pits after his first attempt. So is he trying to get 2 runs on a fresh set of tyre, not liking the second lap performance which his Mercedes is offering him? Well, Gannon's back into the pits again, so maybe is that the best that we're going to see from our second place man? That is not the way that you want to be taking the final corner. That will be undoubtedly an off track there for Gerrit Sees. That is, you know, not what you want to do, especially after an entire lap. It's quite a long lap around here, really quite a technical. To have it all fall away from you on the final lap is pretty heartbreaking, but even so, doing a good job. Our lone Porsche on the grid, I do believe, Matthew Hudson, the Duday Motor Club car, doing a good job. He is currently actually in the lead of the standing. So, you know, do we think that Porsche is going to give him a little bit of an advantage down the straight? Porsche's a little bit quicker in the straight line than, say, the Mercedes. So you might be looking a little bit spicy on that one. Mike Hudson might be.
I think so. I mean, obviously the Porsche was always renowned for late braking and great corner control. And as you can see going around this track, there's a lot of sweeping bends, really short, you know, get right down the first gear corners from high speed. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Porsche can do. They pretty much nerfed it on the the release of the new schedule, but they've obviously sent out the update since then, realizing that they completely broke the car, and now it seems to be back to where it was. But it's quite interesting looking further down the field. We've got a big gaggle of Porsche cars there, and as I say that, Adam Hedgecock manages to get himself up to P5, but we did have 4, but we got Collishaw, Gooch and Flanagan there, all the pros further down the field. So it certainly seems to be a Mercedes dominance at the front end of the field.
Yeah, completely, and Hedgecock actually bucking the trend a little bit. He's up into 5th place now, displacing the top 5 German manufacturer that we had. I mean, Hedgecock was in this sort of gaggle from sort of 6th downwards in the pro standings. They were just a Ferrari gaggle, but slowly the Ferrari's starting to build up the pace, wondering if it's taking them maybe 1 or 2 laps just to build that tyre temperature. Not normally an issue for the Ferrari. It's normally got the opposite issue, actually, that it's very good on its tyres, but it burns them out a little bit quicker than the other GT3s. This is Flanagan. What can he do at the moment? He's about 1.9 seconds off Nesse in the lead of the pro class. Comes across the line. That's a 1 minute 46.478, so an improvement in time, but not an improvement in pace for David Flanagan. Runs well off the track into turn 1, and so that will be his qualifying done and dusted with about 1 minute and 3 seconds to go. Flanagan's qualifying has come to a little bit of a premature end, I should say.
Yeah, probably is. He's the only man out on track. The rest of the drivers have all done their 3 laps out on track, and what's interesting is David Chadwick, who had an excellent Silverstone round, a pretty terrible Donington round, has not really got to grips with the Snetterton track. Is currently down there in P16th, our 2nd place in the AMS. And obviously the 1st place in the AMS at the moment is all the way up there in 8th place. So could be extending his lead. So David Chadwick has a lot to do from the back of the grid to try and make up the points and try and close the gap to Mika, the flying Mika. I think I called him Super Mika last week because he just drove it really well around the car. And I think he's got that mindset to do well here again at Snetterton.
It certainly has. You know, you're talking about, Donington, all of the AM drivers struggling apart from Mika, and that's the key, especially in GT racing, is just being consistent, not making those mistakes. And, if he didn't struggle at Donington, he won't here, as we've been saying, it's a fairly similar track, similar technicality towards, in some corners. And, I think he's got a really, really good chance here today. I don't think he'll be starting necessarily where he would have liked, but 3rd is still a really good opportunity for him to make up those positions through the hour-long race that we have today.
Certainly is, and just for our new viewers, we'll just quickly run through the race. It is an hour-long race. It's a fixed setup with 60% fuel, so they will have to do a pit stop during it. And we have the grid up, and over to you, Seb.
So Chris van der Ness is your pole sitter. Alongside him, 2 tenths off, will be Patrick Gannon. That is your front row. 3rd place goes the way of Scott Ritzter. He'll have Nathan Richardson alongside him in 4th place. Adam Hedgecock is in 5th, with Matthew Cudson rounding out, or leading, I should say, the AM standing. So he is in 6th overall, but leads his class. Jonathan Akesho is 7th, with Mika Gertzi right alongside him in 8th. Kenny McGrath in 9th, with Paul Collishaw in 10th, and that rounds out your top 10. Chris Gooch just missing out on the top 10. He starts in 11th, with David Flanagan in 12th. Alan Mystique will be 13th, alongside him Baron Glover. Phil Regan, we saw him in qualifying, maybe not had the qualifying that he would have liked. He'll start in 15th place. David Chadwick will start alongside him. He's in 16th, and rounding out your 17-car grid, Stephen Brown. He'll start from the back. Watch out for him. I don't think he got his lap necessarily together in qualifying, so he'll be one to watch throughout the race. I think, Andy, the cars are just about to get off. I don't think we don't have a full formation lap around here, but do you think we're going to see some action into turn 1 today?
I think we will do. Certainly, if not turn 1, turn number 2, the hairpin. But it's going to be a crazy first lap, and it's really important for these drivers just to try and make it clean, make it round safely, or it will put pay to the hour-long race here today. So over to you, Seb, for the start of this race.
So all eyes on the Mercedes front row. It's Nesse who will lead the way. He can decide whenever he wants to go. We now watch as the race is about to get underway for round 3 of the Finding Speed League here at Snetterton. Van der Ness decides he wants to go now. The 32 makes an absolutely stellar start. Gannon right behind him in second. They're all squabbling around in the background. I think Collishaw there blinking momentarily. He's regained his space on the track. Akasha around the outside. Oh, there's a Porsche off in the grass. Who was that? That's Matthew Cudson's puff of smoke there. Oh, Collishaw is round. Disaster for the 36, and I think his internet is having some issues. And we have a look now. David Chadwick, he's side by side with the blinking Collishaw. Baron Glover trying to get past the BMW of Phil Regan. Phil Regan's had a great start. He's already up 3 places from his starting position. Baron Glover, though, trying to regain at least one of those positions back. Collishaw still making his way around the track as we all head now down into Agostini corner now up towards the left-hander of Hamilton. Phil Regan doing a good job from him, as I said, up 3 places. Alan Mystique, another great starter. He's up 3 places from his starting point. The BMW driver really liking these conditions, but in the lead it's still Chris Van der Ness, Patrick Gannon second, Scott Ritz the third, Jonathan Akasio now up into 4th overall, but the lead in the AM class. That was a fairly sedate start there, Andy. A little bit of action. I mean, heartbreak for Collishaw. Internet issue striking, I think, at the worst time for him.
Yeah, I think it was. I think the thing with this track, and a lot of viewers can see, is there's big runoff areas. So cars, if they do get it slightly wrong, do have a half chance opportunity to try and get the car back onto track within time. So the Collishaw, and it was our Porsche driver there of Matthew Cudson, was the 2 victims around that first corner, getting it completely wrong and pushing out wide. But through our first lap there, Chris Van der Ness was a great start, as we see Stephen Brown there taking it very wide, coming around Murray's corner, the last corner there, taking it a little bit too deep into that. That's the thing with this track, it really deceives you and pulls you in to try and get you in there, as we see here, a fight for between Chris Gooch in P6 and Kenneth McGrath in P. Oh, he's 6th in class, I apologise. Between himself and the AM driver, Kay McGrath there, who's currently 3rd in class. So this first couple of laps, just trying to get their feet, getting the tyres all nicely warmed up, and then the action will really start to happen.
Oh, it certainly will. You're very right. The drivers have really got to be tyre conscious. They've got to make sure that they bring the tyres in exactly how they want to. You know, it's an hour race. It's not a sprint race. They really have to almost drive it like an endurance event. So, yeah, I think we're going to see, I think this is the calm before the storm. Alan Mystique, though, great job, as I said, by him. I think he's one of our biggest gainers on the grid. 2 cars up 3 positions. And Matthew Cudson, you know, I mentioned it briefly, you know, in commentary on the first lap, went wide at turn 1, lost his lead, and disaster for Hudson. He had so much pace in qualifying, unable at this point to be able to translate that into the race. And is that Richardson either going off the track or having some form of internet issues? Another driver struggling, I think, with a little bit of blinking, really distracting for the other drivers on the track. I think Stephen Brown as well, Andy, has had some form of issue on this lap.
Yeah, it certainly looks like the lower end of the field really struggling at the moment to get to grips with this track, but it's the other story at the front. I mean, Chris Van der Ness, he's managed to pull out a gap of nearly a second over Paul Gannon in 2nd place. Scott Rister there in 3rd, managing to come over, but way off the pace of the front 2 at the moment, 3.8 seconds behind Chris Van der Ness. Then we have our top AM, Jonathan Akasio there in 4th place, who's had a cracking race so far. Really good start, up 3 places from where he started, so really benefited from that first couple of laps to get himself up there. His nearest rival, Mika, is currently down in 7th place.
Oh.
So a little bit of,
And Kenneth McGrath there putting his nose where I don't think it was warranted. Chris Gooch losing places hand over fist. The Mercedes, oh, and then down the inside goes McGrath, and once again we see McGrath spin out. This time, was it Mystique? Oh, and there's all just a concertina effect at the apex of Agostini. And that wasn't necessarily the cleanest driving we could have seen.
No, it certainly wasn't. No, I mean, the problem with this track is so narrow, and just trying to make them passing opportunities to see Regan going down the inside of Paul Collishaw to take the position back from Paul. And I think, like you say, Paul is struggling a little bit with internet issues. Obviously, we don't have the mechanical issues of the cars out on track, but we certainly do have the hardware, as we see Paul blinking again. I think there's nothing worse in iRacing than seeing a car that you're trying to race in front of you blink out, because you never know where he's going to reappear. As he sees he's blinking all over the place at the moment is Paul Collishaw. But this is the battle out in front for P2 there and Paul Gannon's just lost a little bit more space there from P2, 1.2 seconds behind Chris van den Esse. So Chris van den Esse certainly put a lot of practice in on this race to have that 1.3 second gap, and he seems to be slightly extending it lap after lap. But these two are moving away at a rapid rate of knots to the rest of the field here. You can see got Rista there going through it in third, but Jonathan Cassio's under a lot of pressure here from Richardson in fourth place, just looking all over the back of the AM driver, trying to make passes where he can, but very hard to pass on the infield. And we saw a couple of drivers the previous lap trying to make passing moves and getting it completely wrong, coming down to Augustini. Really a narrow part of the track coming on the inside. You really got to clip the inside of this apex to get a good run out of here coming down into Hamilton. It's a very tight infield part of the circuit, and literally you got to follow the cars. I think the real opportunity space to try and do that overtaking is down the Bentley straight and coming into Brundle's down into turn number 9.
Certainly, I think it is, yeah. I mean, all of the overtaking moves that we've seen so far through the infield have not come off necessarily very successfully, some worse than others. It was, of course, McGrath diving to the inside into Palmer. That was never gonna work. Richardson just taking it a little bit easier through Brundle's, just got more pace in the car, more trust in the front end than Akasho does in the BMW. Richardson, I think, is happy at the moment just to stick behind the BMW, not force the issue too much. Through bomb hole they go towards Murray's corner, the final corner. Then we head back to this gaggle. This is how now into Nelson corner, and everything going on. And there's Collishaw once again blinking Chris Gooch there, almost getting away with murder there. We're inside, I think, each other, at least on my screen, for a few seconds. Chris Gooch must have been absolutely terrified in that car. Glover now defending from Mystic as we head through into Murray's corner. And this is a massive gaggle, and they're all being slowed down at the moment, Andy, by Collishaw just blinking around, really distracting everybody.
Certainly is, and obviously a gap now appearing between Collishaw and Gooch with him blinking around. The drivers don't know where he's going to appear. As we see here, Alan Mystic going on the inside there, getting a really good passing move done over on the BMW driver, but he's really going well. It is Mystique at the moment as Dave Chadwick tries to come down the inside of the Mercedes, manages to get the move done there on Glover. Glover moving 2 spots in 2 corners at the moment, so that Mercedes really sort of struggling on the first half of this track, and then sort of gets together on the second half, really.
I mean, Glover was sort of bullied out of the way, wasn't he, through turn 1 by Mystic, and then losing places to Glover. He managed to get down the inside of Chadwick into Augustini, and now, you know, Chadwick is going to be unable really to pass until we head towards Brundle corner. But everybody's just being distracted by Collishaw. I think that's how, you know, Glover lost the position. He didn't know where to place his car into turn 1, went wide to be safe, and Alan Mystic went, well, thank you very much, I'm going to take the inside line. Richardson and Hedgecock, I think, swapping positions around. I saw on the timing tower, they're still 4th and 5th respectively. Flanagan trying to go all the way around the outside of Mika Gerritsen. Cannot find a way through, though. That's through Brundle. Couldn't get the inside line into Nelson, so Flanagan still remains in 6th place. Sorry, that's McGrath and Flanagan. I do apologise. Kenneth McGrath trying to get by the Ferrari driver. Of course, Kenneth McGrath was involved, wasn't he, in that incident earlier on in the race, heading into Palmer corner. He'll be hoping to have a cleaner overtake this time, because that car really can't sustain that much damage. These GT3s, very sensitive to picking up body damage.
Yeah, it certainly is. That Mercedes is really good on a straight line, but a bit of a beast when it comes around the corner. We're looking at a battle here for Jonathan Ocasio in 4th place at the moment. All over the back of him is Nathan Richardson, just trying to get past him at the moment, not finding the opportunity as we see there. Jonathan going really defensive into Agustin, but he might have gone, I thought he went a little bit too wide there, but managed to recover his car back in obviously a first gear corner, going relatively slow around there. But Nathan Richardson's just lining up to try and take the AM driver as Paul Collishaw just goes off track.
Yeah, Collishaw, I think he'll be distracted as well from his internet issues. He'll be aware every time he blinks, and you know, if he's like me, he'll be looking. There's a little bar at the top of your screen that sort of tells you your vital statistics in terms of all your computer and network status. So he'll be looking at that. He'll be aware, and I think, you know, just a little bit distracted by that. Alan Mystic manages to get past Collishaw. So Mystic now trying to get past Chris Gooch. We saw Chris Gooch being sort of almost bullied out of the way by McGrath a few laps ago. Now Mystic is going to try and make his way through down the Bentley straight towards Brundle corner. Is Alan Mystic feeling a little bit adventurous? Is he going to try and go all the way around the outside of Brundle? Plays it a little bit safe. Then we're going to see a little bit move. There's McGrath going on the grass as he tries to enter Nelson corner. So that's now allowed Gooch to get up to McGrath. So it's McGrath versus Gooch versus Mystic. The three purple cars down the inside goes Mystic on Gooch. That's going to be brave. That's through bomb hole as they now head towards Karam and then into the final corner of Murray's. Round the outside goes Alan Mystic, and that is a superb move there by the British driver in the BMW.
Yeah, great overtaking move there, but obviously a little bit of teamwork maybe going on there to not push it too much there. But a great move there by Alan Mystic. The BMW seems like a really racy car. Same with the Ferrari around this track. The Mercedes is, as we all know, a very good all-rounder car, but on these tight, twisty circuits, it's a bit of a beast to try and get round. So you've really got to be on top form, being able to drive that Mercedes out on track. But still, a lot of the cars all joined quite closely together, but one of the two cars out front that are not with a pack is Chris van der Nesse and Paul Gannon at the moment. Paul Gannon's managed to bring that lead of Chris van der Nesse down to less than half a second at the moment. These two in the Mercedes are completely running away with the field at the moment. 5.9 seconds ahead of Scott Rister in third place. Not even literally, just saw Scott in the background there coming around. So these two really racing away. And one thing we haven't talked about, Seb, is the round of pit stops. Now in the previous, as we see there, Jonathan Cassio from fourth place overall, I think may have come to a bit of contact there with Nathan, and unfortunately has come off the worst there, and that's terrible news. Is he crabbing?
I didn't quite catch, but let's see what's happened to the 135 car. So Richardson's gone on the outside line. That's going to become the inside line for you know, Acasio there I think will feel pretty hard done by. That was quite an aggressive move from Richardson. I didn't quite see if he got his nose ahead. That car looks fairly okay, I think, Andy, but he would have picked up some damage for that, and Gerritsy's now inherited the AM lead. So, you know, Acasio had the pace, had the good start. Unlucky, though, with a little bit of contact, and has lost the lead. So, yeah, not going Acasio's way at the moment.
No, it's been unfortunate. Obviously, fourth overall in place before that incident was under a lot of pressure from Richardson from behind. I think it was only a matter of time before Richardson got a little bit frustrated behind there on this track and tried to make a move. I wasn't quite sure who was at fault on that, but certainly going side by side into I think that was Nathan, Nelson's. They were going into side by side. Unfortunately, just clipped the back end of Acasio's car. So Acasio seems to have the pace, so it may be that we have a really good battle for the AM Championship at the moment. So Acasio is just behind Gerritsy's from there. But we have another spinner, Stephen Brown of Indy Autosports. Where is he going? He's going massively off track, and where's he rejoined? Is he just cutting his own track at the moment, I think?
He is. So he's just coming through Agostini. Did he spin out close to what was it, turn 10, and then had to sort of drive across the track? Is he doing this bit twice? Unusual there from Stephen Brown. So what has happened to the 182 Ferrari? So this is in to Palmer turn 3. Is he just going to lose the rear, head onto the grass? Yeah, he is. He's just run plane too wide. So he hasn't managed to cut the track, but he's had to do quite the rallycross adventure over the middle of the infield. And Stephen Brown's race, I mean, he had that incident earlier on at the start. His race just goes from bad to worse.
It is. That was An extreme off track, if I've ever seen one there, from Stephen Brown of Indie Autosports, and not the day he's really wanted in that Ferrari at the moment. But yeah, before obviously we saw all that action out on track. Pit stops have always been interesting. The first 2 rounds of this really, you know, shook it up out on track. Some people coming in early, some people just going as far as they could go. So, you know, and the different tactics really paying off in the different rounds. We saw in Donington the early stoppers not really benefiting from that tactic as the late stoppers went on there. But I suppose around this track, it's, in my opinion, it's probably going right to the end of your limit, because what you don't want to be doing is getting caught up in that midfield battle. But if you're in the midfield, you've got the opportunity, if you feel that you're faster, to maybe pit that earlier. So it's the conundrum of the pit stops. What's your thoughts there?
I mean, I think I share the same thoughts as you. I think I'd want to go as long as I could. You know, a trial like this is really going to benefit low if you're running less weight in the car. I mean, you're simply just going to be able to take the corners a little bit quicker, and that's where you gain most of your lap time around this circuit. So I think, yeah, you sort of run to the end of your stint, especially if you are sort of, you know, Van der Nesse in the lead, Gannon second, Rister in third. But then you're right, if you are lower down the order, you can think about risking it, coming in early, trying to get the undercut. You know, the only thing I'd say is that you tend to be quicker on low fuel. That's very late there from Patrick Gannon, almost making contact with Van der Nesse into Montreal. Nesse holds on to the lead for now, but Gannon really so much quicker, you'd have to say, than Van der Nesse, at least into the braking zones. Van der Nesse under a lot of pressure at the moment. What I would say, though, going back to the pit stops very quickly, is you tend to be quicker on low fuel, so you'd have to really think that you could go a lot quicker, even with, you know, 60 odd litres in the tank. So it's quite a gamble, but, you know, I can see probably Collishaw, actually, him coming in, trying to, you know, just sort of run by himself, not having to be distracted by having other cars around. Richardson as well, I think he's having some internet issues, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see Richardson and Collishaw as well, getting that pit stop done early and just sort of running their own race and just hoping that by the end of the race they've made up a little bit of race time.
Yeah, definitely. It's always the conundrum of the pit stop strategies, and really mixes up these GT races, certainly this hour-long session that they have. 17 minutes into an hour-long race at the moment. Chris Van der Nesse leading from pole position, under pressure from Paul Gannon at the moment, 0.7 of a second between them two. Paul Gannon, you know, is known to be in the previous 2 rounds a bit quicker than Chris, but Chris is doing a fantastic job keeping that lead at the moment. In the lead of the AMs, we got Mika Getrides again, just Mr. Consistent at the moment, just not keeping out of trouble. Unfortunately, we had our second place in the AM, Jonathan Ocasio there, who was in 4th place, but unfortunately got into a little bit of an incident with Nathan Richards and put pay to him. But he's now on a charge to try and close that gap down to have a real ding-dong in the amateur battle for this round here at Snetterton. Just looking further down the field, there seems to be sort of like 2 pods of racing at the moment. David Flanagan has Phil Regan, Alan Mystique and Paul Collishaw. I think something's happened to Kenneth McGrath as well. He's come off again. He's not having the best of days out there, Seb.
No, that is at the final corner, Murray's corner, and I think he's probably gone off on Karam, the corner before the last one. I think he's had to sort of scamper across the grass like we saw the Ferrari Stephen Brown do earlier on. Yeah, as I suspected. So we are now coming into... Actually, no, he has come into the final corner. I do apologise there. He got a little bit lost. So just run too wide, too eager on the throttle, then has to do the well, not the spin turn, the long sort of taxi sort of turn around, and off Kenneth McGrath goes. But you're right, he's not had the race that he would have wanted, making contact earlier on with, was it Gooch and some other cars as well, and now having that spin, a really tough day for Kenneth McGrath.
Yeah, we go on looking at Matthew Cutson, our loner of Porsche around here at Snetterton. Had a really good qualified if on the grid, but unfortunately got turn 1 completely wrong. Didn't manage to cause any damage to the car, just completely off track around turn one that put paid to his race and pretty much put him at the back of the field. So he is on a charge at the moment to try and get back up that amateur standing, considering that he was the top amateur in qualifying in that Porsche. But it's going to be interesting to see from the tyres as well. We all know that the Porsche sort of like choose the tyres as well as the Ferrari. So will they start to struggle towards the tail end of the race? But currently watching our second place in the AM Championship, David Chadwick just trying to get some positions at the moment. 6th in class, not really the results he was looking for here today. Considering it's only a 5-round championship as well, you know, you've got to maximise your points at every single round, and to have a couple of bad rounds really puts paid to your championship.
It does. This is such a high pressure championship. I think, you know, that's why it's so enjoyable as a viewer to watch, because these drivers really have to be inch perfect every single lap for every single race. And you're right, when a race doesn't go your way, it really hurts your championship standing. I mean, Hudson, not had the race that he would have wanted. Went wide at turn one, lost the lead of the AM standings, and now having to make his way through the field. And Chadwick now a little bit in the way as we head into Agostini, not going to really be able to find a way through Hamilton. Next, as we were saying, his next best opportunity is Mystic now takes his turn to go off the track. That's on the exit of Hamilton corner. So has that been a little bit of assisted by a little bit of contact, or has he just run wide on the exit of Hamilton, done what we've seen from other drivers, run onto the AstroTurf, spin the car, and I think we're about to see what happened. And yep, up to Hamilton. I think, Andy, we're going to see what we've seen before on the grass around the car goes a little bit earlier actually than I was expecting. Oh, and so close to making contact with Paul Collishaw. And Mystique though rejoining the race in 7th place in class, 14th overall. Got it all to do now though. After, of course, we saw that mistake from the BMW driver. Van der Nesse still leads the race at the moment, coming in to Agostini with Gannon right behind him. What's going to happen? Are these drivers thinking now about making a little bit of a pit stop? But while everything's calmed down, let's have a quick word from this series sponsor.
Inspired by real-life racing standards, the Forte load cell pedals have been thoroughly tested by racers and sim racers alike. If you've ever been looking for the best race car pedal, brake pedal feel without going full hydraulics, look no further. Please order yours now at Asetek SimSports webshop. As we rejoin the race here, 22 minutes down, we're getting into the realms now of the pit stop strategies, and I think that Paul Gannon may be just sticking behind Chris Van der Nesse at the moment to possibly save fuel and maybe get that one extra lap, because we can just see how racy he is coming down into turn number 2 into Montreal. That corner gets really close behind Chris Van der Nesse, so he may be just trying to save a little bit of fuel behind the front Chris Van der Nesse to try and get that extra lap when it comes around to the pit stop. Not the biggest of laps around here, so good opportunities to save fuel and maybe get that overcut of the one lap. But these two here at the moment just flying as we watch Alan Mystique again getting it slightly wrong around the corner. I was just looking at that other one, and it was a very strange one. He was literally still going straight when he started to spin. And I think that corner there, though, is a bit unfortunate where you have to brake and turn at the same time. So unfortunately, it looks like Alan's not really mastering the brake turn tactics around here, but he certainly does have damage on that car. Not coming into the pits to get it repaired. The cars do have a fast repair at their disposal should they require it, so pretty sure Alan's just waiting for the round of pit stop so he can fill his car and repair his car instantly in the same thing. There's no point losing too much time if you can still manage to get the car around, but he will be losing valuable time out on track.
He will be. Not sure if that second spin was contact induced. I don't think we've seen any other reason why Alan Mystic would have any damage to the front of his car. So interesting to see where he's picked that up. Also with all of what's been going on. It's just like Chris Gooch has retired. The other Mystic Turtles entry will take no further part in the race. Patrick Gannon, though, as we have a look at our race lead, I think you're right. I think he is saving just a little bit of fuel at the moment. Oh, very wide there through Montreal. Had an armful of opposite lock. That's going to cost him a lot of time. The gap now up to almost a second between himself and Van der Nessy. So Gannon really, really struggling at the moment. I mean, it looked like one lap ago he was looking like he could go for the lead, and what a difference a lap makes.
It certainly is. The misfortunes of each lap. I think just Chris is just being real consistent at the front. I know him personally, he is very methodical in the way that he approaches his iRacing races. He's very methodical. He literally brakes at the same point, really doesn't try and push the car beyond its limits. So hopefully I haven't just commentated curse Chris, but he's doing a great job at the moment. Paul Gannon behind him is sort of itching and just seeing if he can get past at any opportunity, and unfortunately making slight little mistakes that doesn't put him out of contention there, only 0.9 of a second off, but gives Chris a little bit of breathing room again, because you know, once you have a car behind you for that long in a race, you no matter how cool you are, you will feel the pressure as they come around bomb hole here for lap, near enough the end of lap 15, 26 minutes into this race. We would have normally seen a couple of drivers come in for them early pit stoppers, so they may be all just going right to the maximum amount that their fuel limit can hold around here in Snetterton.
And indeed, David Flanagan, he's had a fairly quiet race, hasn't he, so far? Just been lapping away up 4 positions from where he started, not gaining any time on Akasho ahead of him. That's not in the same class, but Flanagan doing a great job. Phil Regan as well didn't have the qualifying that he would have expected. I don't think we rode on board with him, couldn't find the time. Hedgecock now into the pits, the first of our planned pit stops, I should say. And what is Adam Hedgecock going to do from 5th place?
Yeah, first of all, pit stoppers now, we should start seeing it is in the realms of coming in for the maximum of these cars can do. Certainly within the next 3 or 4 laps, you would expect them all to come in. But Adam Hedgecock blinking first, coming into the pits. Wouldn't expect them to take tyres. Phil Regan follows him in behind from XZ Racing. They seem to be having a better day because that team just had a disaster out in Donington Park. I think every one of their cars spun at least twice out on that track, and even got caught up with their own teammates, so that really wasn't around for that XZ Racing team, but seem to have a better day here today at the moment. So Phil Regan just in the pits. Nope, I thought he was going up on the ramp. It was just the off-camber nature of that pit. The pit stops there with the raised platform. So Phil Regan's managed to come back out on track. So we'll see after the round of pit stops where he ends up.
Yeah, I thought he was going up on his jacks too. A very aggressive. Oh, that's very wide for Phil Regan, I should say. Through turn 1, thought he was going to shoot straight off the track. Thankfully for Phil, the tyre somewhat up to temperature, providing him with just enough grip to stay on the tarmac. Alan Mystique now also into the pits. He's taken his one and only fast repair. Unsurprisingly, he wants to get rid of that damage that he sustained in his first stint. He'll be hoping to have a slightly better second stint to this race. Not gone the way that he would have wanted whatsoever. Rejoins a nice little gap behind Phil Regan, but I mean, Alan Mystique, he was having such a good race, wasn't he, until those mistakes started to creep in. And Coley Shaw there once again, almost ending up off the track.
I mean, I think it's just the nature of this track. It's, you know, it's a real technical driver's track, this one. You know, you've got the opportunity to extend them limits on the corners, but if you extend them too much, this truck will bite back. So it gives with one hand, but certainly it takes with the other. And a couple of the drivers, Mystique being one of them, as well as Paul Collishaw, the Ferrari that we're watching out on track, has sort of been plagued by a couple of off-track incidents, which has really put paid to the race today. And it's really going to come down to who can be the most consistent out on track is the one that's going to be the one that wins this race at the moment. I mean, you've got Mika, who was super consistent around Donington Tar at the top of your Rams there in 5th place, getting chased down slightly by Jonathan Ocasio out on track. Chris Van Den Esse and Paul Gannon at the front of the battle again have another one. Oh, as we see Kenneth McGrath again coming slightly off around turn number 3 there. I don't think that's been his favoured corner.
Has not been both first and second into the pits. Gannon was unable to save any fuel behind Van Der Nesse, so it's all going to be about who has the quickest or the quicker pit stop. They should be fairly even. Both in Mercedes will have the same fuel times. Both won't take any tyres, so I think it'll be status quo as they exit the pits, but unusual. You normally see, you know, the driver behind employ the do whatever he doesn't do strategy. You know, if the guy ahead of you pits, well, why not? I mean, if you've got the fuel, go for another lap. Just try something different. Richardson also in. Garrity's in as well. This undoubtedly, Andy, is the pit stop time. And again, as I said, status quo for the top 2. Now the race is really on to who wants to win this Snetterton race.
Yeah, they were bang on the same time there leaving the pit, so no change in the difference of timings. But these pit lanes are pretty severe. We just saw there Nathan Richardson coming in, literally fly up one of the bumps and overshoot his pit stop, so I had to reverse back. So he would have lost a bit more time to Scott Rister in 3rd place there. So Richardson losing out slightly there on timing, but pretty much the lap for all the cars to come in, as we see them pretty much all filing in at the moment. Mika managing to get out, same with Jonathan Cassio there. I think Ocasio just took a little bit longer there than Mika in that pit stop, which where Jonathan was trying to close down that gap to this win for this round, has probably made the job a little bit harder for him again in the final 29 minutes of this race. But looking down there, so no real big changes from the pit exit strategies that each of the drivers have. Pretty much status quo out on track, and it's all down now to what they can do in this final half of this race.
All about managing the car now. It really feels like an endurance race at this moment. It's all about getting to the end. Alan Mystic again heading off the track, this time at the final corner, the second time that he's fallen foul of Murray's corner. Alan Mystic not having the race at all. He'll be hoping to get this one done and dusted and forget about this fairly sharpish. Alan Mystic really not having a race at all. And just dropping. Oh, sorry, Andy.
No, it's like you said before, he really had some pace around this track, and it's just been all down to the incidents he's had. He struggled at that last corner, and he certainly struggled at Hamilton as well. So 2 corners that are probably one of the most treacherous out on track, has really put pay to Alan Mystique's race at the moment. Still 7th in class, so still ahead of a few drivers, but let's have a look. Here we go. This is the Nathan Richardson pit lane. So he comes into the pits, then he goes into his stall, and watch him jump. He literally jumps up over, stops out, and has to reverse back in to get into his stall. So them little curbs are quite severe.
They're really severe. Actually, I don't remember seeing a pit lane it's treacherous as the Snetterton pit lane. Let's watch this again. I mean, it's so easy to damage a splitter, and I mean it's a real disadvantage to him as well, because he is going to be unable to slow the car down while he's in the air. I mean, obviously. So yeah, I mean that is not favourable at all for Nathan Richardson. Ocasio as well got another awkward position. He takes sort of the opposite way to Richardson, brakes slower, costs himself a little bit more time. He's sort of half on, half off one of these curves. I mean, it's a really unique pit lane here.
It certainly is, and a few of the drivers not used to it, and luckily, the cars can go through each other on in the pit lane, because if that wasn't the case, there would have been a few contacts made within that pit lane. But back out front, Chris Van der Nesse still managing to hold off the ever challenging Paul Gannon there in second place, and sort of extending his lead slightly as well over Paul Gannon is Chris Van der Nesse. So really has got this track nailed down at the moment. Paul fighting for all his worth. He had a couple of laps where he was right on the tail of Chris Van der Nesse, but ever since we saw him have that slight incident round this corner, turn number 2 Montreal, he's come a little bit more wary of this track, and Chris is really capitalising on that and making a dart for it, really, to try and break the slipstream effect that Paul will be getting off Chris.
I mean, the issue that Gannon's got is that they are so close together on lap times that he's not been able to catch up, as you were saying, and Van der Nesse now is so close to breaking that crucial 1 second mark, and at which point, Patrick Gannon's going to start to struggle to get that slipstream. He's going to lose a little bit of top-end speed, and at that point, I think Van der Nesse, he's got this race done and dusted. It's his to lose in a way. So, yeah, Gannon's going to have to find some pace from somewhere. I think you're also right. I think, he is feeling a little bit more cautious, especially into Montreal, where he was so, and has been, so quick this entire race after making that mistake. So Van der Nesse doing a superb job at the moment. Gannon, a little bit of grass on the apex of Brundle corner. It just seems like Gannon is driving a little bit scruffy at the moment. A little bit of a twitch through bomb hole. Really just starting, I think, to overdrive that car at the moment. And Van der Nesse just looking even better for this race win at the moment, unfortunately. Unfortunately for us, I should say, because it's always nice to have a really close battle for the lead.
Yeah, I think Patrick is just destined to be that second place man in this championship. I think I've been calling him Paul, so I do apologise to Patrick there for this race. But he certainly seems to be the man that likes coming second in this race, so probably itching to get that first race win. Only 5 rounds, so not a lot of opportunity to get that race win, and he probably thought that tonight was his main opportunity to do that with the main protagonist. As we still feel Regan going slightly off wide here. Again, another one being caught out by one of the corners, and that is Nelson coming. Yeah, that's coming down into Nelson. Just took it a little bit too deep there, and unfortunately came off wide. But I suppose the beauty of this track is, Seb, is that the runoffs are so long or so wide that you're not really going to cause a lot of damage. The only damage you're going to do is to your time.
You're completely right there. I think it's very difficult to find any form of barrier to the track, and it's good in one way because it's such a tricky circuit. I mean, the grass is right beside the track. There's no sort of astroturf, or not a lot of it, surrounding the track. But it's good that the drivers have a lot of runoff, and I think if we hadn't have had that, I think we'd had a lot more drivers retiring from the race. I mean, we've had some Mystic and some other drivers really having issues staying within the track limit. So maybe we do need some barriers there. I mean, that's an argument we can get into all day long. Flanagan, though, doing a good job at the moment. He's now past Regan, of course, after Regan made that mistake into Brundle and Nelson. Flanagan a little bit slow through there, and that's McGrath off the road. That's on the exit of turn 1, so that has happened way before we caught up to him. So he's been on the grass for quite a considerable amount of time, has Kenneth McGrath, but back on the track and now under pressure actually from Alan Mystic. So Alan, after all of those issues that he's had, at least he's got somebody to race. BMW versus Mercedes, round Palmer corner, heading to Agostini. Does Alan Mystic feel a little bit adventurous? Does he dive to the inside a little bit too far back? Thought they were going to be a little bit closer as they headed towards the apex of Agostini, but Alan Mystic, and it's such a good feeling, when you've had a difficult race and things haven't gone your way. If you see another car up ahead that you're racing, it really just almost distracts you from the race, and you can just have a little bit of fun, you relax, and you'll find that your consistency just starts to go up again as you sort of remember why you like racing, because after a difficult race like Alan's had, sometimes it's really difficult to regain that focus.
It certainly is, and having somebody in front of you to fight with just brings back all the adrenaline in him, saying, well, might have had a disastrous race, but at least I can have a really good battle here. And Kenneth, I must admit that he was quite impressive around that first corner. How he didn't spin the car, literally took the off track, managed to keep hold of the car as we got David Flanagan not doing a good a job as Kenneth to try and maintain the speed there. But that first corner, which is quite treacherous, and I haven't seen what they've been hitting. I wonder if it is that little rise in the sausage curb on the second apex that these drivers are hitting when they're coming into that off track. And let's have a look here. So David Flanagan just coming down. Does he clip the inside of the sausage curb? No, he literally just goes straight off. So decided to not even turn for the corner and use the off grass. So an unfortunate incident. Whether that was hardware, we will not know.
I think it was just a little bit too late under brakes. So again, Flanagan's off wide as we go live on board with him. That's out of Hamilton corner. So Flanagan not having the perfect lap by any means. And I think you might be right, Andy. Has he got some form of issue with his brake pedal? Something changed in the footwell of his rig that's just struggling? And that's Chadwick now off the track. That's at turn 8. So what's happened to Chadwick? It seems like everybody at the moment struggling all of a sudden with the track surface and the track grip. It's almost like somebody spilt some oil on the track. Unfortunately, not something that we can do in iRacing, but I tell you what, Andy, 102 degrees Fahrenheit is the track temperature. That's around 40 degrees Celsius. That is pretty hot for a track in England, so maybe drivers starting to be caught out a little bit by the high track temperatures.
Certainly is, and obviously tyre wear taken into consideration as well. They're 40 minutes into this race. The tyres will be well past their best, and if they're trying to approach the circuit the same way they were at the start, they're going to get caught out. And I think that's what's happening to a few of the drivers, a combination of the extreme heat on track and the fact that the tyres are starting to go away from them. I mean, you've got to look at the tyre wear around this pace. There's a lot of high speed corners, but there's also a lot of corners where you've got to brake aggressively down to first gear, like this next corner we're going to watch Dave Chadwick going around, coming up into fourth gear all the way down into first, heavy on the brakes, trying to stop the car coming around, and then accelerating hard out of the corner. So, you know, the tyre wear around this track, as you said, it's not one of the ones that iRacing really uses a lot in its official series. So a lot of guys probably haven't had the experience around this circuit that they would have around others to understand how their tyres will fare through an hour-long race. And I think that's what's catching quite a few of the drivers out.
Yeah, talking of catching drivers out, what has happened to Patrick Gannon? He's now 10.5 seconds behind Van der Nesse. They're only separated by a second, only a few laps to go. So Patrick Gannon, somewhere in all of that, must have made some form of mistake. Nothing's come up on our timing tower. Smoothie Kumo, though, with the rescue, he's found exactly what has happened to Patrick Gannon. This is into the final corner. Our second place man fighting the lead and takes a spin on the exit of Murray's Corner. Not the first driver to do that by any means today, but Patrick Gannon, a costly mistake. And if he had any chance of winning the race earlier on, that is all but gone after that costly mistake at the final corner.
Yeah, it certainly has. What that has given is Scott Rister, like you were saying, you know, the drivers out in front, if they're on their own, they have a little bit of a boring time. And Scott has been that man. He has been sort of in no man's land. You know, the front two were miles ahead of him, and Richardson behind him is about 11 seconds. So pretty much driving this whole race around with no one to challenge. But now he has an opportunity here with Paul Gannon. He will be very cautious, like round turn number 2 Montreal. He'll be cautious around that last turning as well. And this could be an opportunity for Scott to close that gap. He's still got time to do it. He's got about 18 minutes left, 17 minutes left of this race to try and close that 5-second gap, because Paul Gannon will realise that he is completely lost the race for the race win here today at Snetterton. But, you know, he needs to be aware that Scott Rister is now within 5 seconds of him. So any other slight mistakes that Patrick Gannon makes, it could be really costly, and he could find himself going down to the bottom spot of the podium.
Don't underestimate that pressure. You know, Gannon's he's had it relatively easy in terms of he's been the one that's been applying the pressure to Van der Nesse, but now, you know, Gannon is coming under pressure. I mean, it's pressure of his own doing, but that can really affect, you know, you as a driver, especially if your stint has gone, you know, really, really well up until that point. You've made a mistake, and at least I've really struggled with just being able to sort of accept it and move on. And it seems like the best drivers are able to do that. And Gannon, you know, will be a little bit more susceptible to making those mistakes, maybe starting to overdrive the car a little bit, and that might affect, you know, his tyre wear, his fuel consumption as well. But Gannon, at least at the moment, he's got the pace over Scott Rister in third, but you're right, it's about just not making any more mistakes, just bringing it home, just being calm and collected at the wheel. Another driver that's been like that is Phil Regan, and actually this man, Matthew Cudson, made that costly mistake, didn't he, on the exit of turn 1 on the first lap, and now having to make his way through the field. He's in 4th place in his class, trying to get back onto the podium. Driver that's currently ahead of him that's on the podium is Phil Regan. Phil is up 7 places from where he started, so superb job by Phil Regan, but you have to think, Andy, Regan coming under pressure, Cudson just getting ever closer, and I think this is a matter of time before Cudson regains his podium spot.
Definitely is. Matthew had a terrible start after qualifying 5th overall, the top AM driver in this field, so we know he's got the pace around here, and is currently putting a lot of pressure on Regan in front of him, just coming out of here, the corner. Really need a good exit area down the Bentley Straight to maximise the slipstream effect coming down into Brundle Corner, turn number 9. Don't think he's close enough to do it, but he's putting Phil Regan, under a lot of pressure at the moment. We saw that last corner that we were on board with him. Phil Regan literally all over the place, trying to look at the defensive lines at the moment. So Matthew could really try and set Phil up for an opportunist pass, making him going on defensive on one of the corners that you need a fast exit on, and trying to power out the corner. So it's a really interesting fight for the last step of the podium on the amateurs. But that was a really narrow entry into there for Matthew, which loses him a little bit of space. So Phil gets a little bit of breathing space coming up again to start lap 27 of this race. Currently have 14 minutes left of this hour-long race, and he's just flown by, Seb.
Oh, it really has. Super enjoyable race here tonight around Snetterton, and 14 minutes left to go. What are we going to see? I think Cudson was caught out there by Regan going slow, but we've got Alan Mystic once again spinning, and that's at the final corner. That's before the final corner. Waits for another car to come through. Hits the inside curb. That's going to do a number to the floor. Alan Mystic's race has not gone well, has it, for him?
No, when it was, we were just talking about him having a little bit of a fight opportunity, and that's sort of been paid to rest now, and his days has gone from bad to worse. Is Alan currently P8 in the AM standing at the moment? Not the lowest one. That obviously goes to Brown, the unfortunate Indy Sport driver that we saw earlier on going extreme off track. But I mean, Alan's just come off far too much on this night. I mean, as we see Stephen Brown again, our last place in the AM, coming slightly off. Not been the race for our bottom 2 in the AMs at the moment, Alan Mystique and Stephen Brown. But you know, there's always the next race to go to.
And that's a really good mindset to be in as a driver. You've got to be able to really focus and go, actually, you know what, I'm going to forget about this race. You know, I'm going to learn what I can from it, but I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to let it influence my next races. I'm just going to turn up at the next race and just try my absolute best. And this has not been Brown's race whatsoever. Collishaw now trying to get past McGrath. McGrath, another one to have had a few issues in this race. Collishaw on the inside, heading into Brundle. McGrath tries to go all the way around the outside. Superb move there by Paul Collishaw, but he's gone too deep into Nelson corner. McGrath through, but if he'd have made that stick, Paul Collishaw, he would have had to, I would have taken a bow, because that was a superb move. Just broke a little bit too late, was a little bit ambitious, and McGrath still ahead of Collishaw.
Yeah, Collishaw went into that corner, got the passing move done to perfection, just couldn't stop that Ferrari in time for going round, and has to do it all again now with Kenneth. But Kenneth's obviously had a few issues himself with off tracks as well, so with having a flying Ferrari all over the back of you at the moment will put extra pressure on Kenneth, and this is all, that's That lift there that we just saw from Kenneth, that is the inside curb of that sausage, of the inside sausage bit. It's got a raise on the track, and that's exactly the point that I was trying to do. It's great that you've just done it for me, Kenneth, so I can show the viewers on how much that curb can affect the cars coming out of turn number 1 if they do it. But Kenneth McGrath under a bit of pressure here from Paul Collishaw. Paul Collishaw not had the greatest of round. Normally is Mr. Consistent, but this certainly hasn't been his round. Started off with internet connections where he was sort of blinking all over track and come off a few times, and unfortunately is going to be probably taking home 7th in the Pro, but really wants, as he tries to get, okay, a little bit of coming together there between himself and...
So we see Kenneth McGrath there, almost getting collected by Baron Glover. Glover goes through past McGrath. McGrath now down to 7th in the AM standings, down to 14th overall. Collishaw, what was he thinking? I think I have to gonna... I don't like calling out drivers on a broadcast, but I think Collishaw just thought that McGrath wasn't going to be there. McGrath was there. He can't disappear. And contact was made, and Collishaw has got off almost scot-free. Probably a little bit of damage to the rear right of that Ferrari. But apart from that, not much. But McGrath really feeling the effects of that contact. And Glover saying, thank you very much. I'll take 6th place in the AM standings. McGrath now returns to the pit lane. Clearly too much damage for Kenneth to continue, and it just seems, Andy, that the drivers that are having a good race just are having a supreme race, and then the drivers that haven't had the best of luck, it just absolutely rains. Oh, that was a drive-through for Kenneth McGrath, so that 4x that he would have gained from Collishaw's contact has put him over the threshold. So Kenneth McGrath has had to come through the pits to serve his penalty. Oh, poor poor Kenneth, I should say. I think I'm calling him Kevin. That's one each there. Andy, do apologise, Kenneth.
We do, as we watch the front of this race. Chris van der Nesse's sort of been given a lifeline now with Patrick Gannon having that spin at the last corner. 10 seconds ahead, not really gaining anything into that is Patrick. So Chris van der Nesse just needs to keep it nice and clean out on track. He has been the quiet man. We saw him at Silverstone nearly get a podium from a last lap incident between 2nd and 3rd in that race. Donington again had a real quiet race, but was at the front end of the field, and now he's going to get his first race win here at Snetterton, as long as he can keep it nice and smooth out on track, which I'm sure he will do now, knowing the gap that he does have, which seems to be extending slightly, getting very close to 11 seconds at the moment, just coming up on the back of his teammate to lap him. So that'll be a nice easy pass for Chris to obtain the overtake on his teammate there of Send It Sport. But I mean, he's had a really consistent race. He hasn't got the fastest lap out on track, but his lap times have been consistent throughout the whole race, and that's one of the main attributes that Chris does bring to racing, is you can always guarantee that he's going to get consistently within 1 second of his lap time every single lap, and it's been really to his advantage here at Snetterton, currently leading this race from pole out over Patrick Gannon in 2nd place, and it looks like he's on for his first race win here tonight.
He has actually got the fastest lap as well. So yeah, he's doing a superb job. Van der Nesse just been the class of the field. Gannon got close, was hassling him for a bit, but I mean, Chris, to his credit, soaked up that pressure really well. Didn't make any mistakes. It was Patrick, in fact, who made the mistakes, and that lost him any chance of getting the win. And yeah, Van der Nesse, superb job so far. He is certainly the master of Snetterton tonight. Right, he gets past his teammate. That's going to be nice and easy. I think his teammate could have got out of the way a little bit quicker, but of course, don't have to. There's no regulations about it in the iRacing sporting code. It's not like a blue flag that you send to see in more single-seater events where you have to get out of the way fairly sharpish. It's all up to the quicker car, I should say, to get past. So Van der Nesse doing exactly what he should do, and I guess he's doing exactly what was expected of him as well. Sorry, David Chadwick doing exactly what was expected of him as well as he crosses the line. And an essay now 7.5 minutes to go in this race, just about counting down the laps. He's got such a gap at the moment, hasn't he, that he can almost... Oh, there's a big crash there. That's Adam Hedgecock in the wall. That's on the exit of Williams. What has happened to the Ferrari?
He must have taken that corner a little bit too deep, got onto the kitty litter on the outside, onto the mud, and unfortunately kicked his car around. So he was in 5th place. Has lost 2 positions to Mika and Jonathan there, the 2 AM drivers in front of him, so losing 2 places over that spin. But as we're getting into the last 5 minutes, we'll just have a quick word from our main title sponsor again before we get into the last couple of laps here around at Snetterton. Inspired by real-life racing standards, the Forte load cell pedals have been thoroughly tested by racers and sim racers alike. If you have been looking for the best race car brake pedal without going full hydraulic, look no further. Please place your order now at Asetek SimSports webshop. Well, we are now into the last 5 minutes of this race here at Snetterton. Chris van den Esse has led from the green light at the start of this race. Was under a bit of pressure from Patrick Gannon for 2nd place. But unfortunately, Patrick did have a spin coming out of the last turn, which really has given Chris van den Esse sort of a 10-minute lap of victory around here at the moment. He is closing in slightly, is Patrick, 9.4 seconds, so has gained a second, but Chris doesn't really need to be. But Mika, Mr. Cool Calm, has got it completely wrong coming through Brundle, completely missing out Nelson coming over the corner into the last bit of this course, and has now given the opportunity for Jonathan, who is right behind him there in the BMW of XZ Racing, to get right up to the tail of that Mercedes. So it's going to be a last 5-minute battle between these two to see who takes the top spot of the podium. Mika going super defensive here because lost a lot of speed there. Jonathan trying to get his car past him. Has managed to get the car down the... Oh, Mika just cuts off the nose. Jonathan had that inside line on it, but Mika slammed that door firmly shut on the BMW driver there coming down into turn number 2, Montreal. And Jonathan will not be liking the fact that Mika just did that to him. So it's interesting to see now how Jonathan pays his tactic. It's going to be a hard part of the track, so just needs to make sure that he tucks under the rear wing of that Mercedes up in front to try to give him the opportunity coming down the Bailey straight. Oh, as Mika goes extremely wide, this is an opportunity for Jonathan. Takes it really close on the apex, gets a great run out, and unfortunately Mika buckled under the pressure there. Coming through Augustini, took it extremely wide, gave the opportunity for Jonathan, and Jonathan said thank you very much.
Yeah, Jonathan, after of course that contact earlier on, retakes the race lead. This is how it happened. We saw it, how it unfolded from Jonathan's on board, but Mika just too late under braking, trying to just gain a little bit of time over his competitor, got it all wrong, and off the track Mika goes. And you're right, Jonathan says thank you very much, I'll take that, and off he goes. This is Matthew Cudson. He had an incredible recovery drive after that mistake on lap 1. It was all going his way. He was in 3rd ahead of Regan, but something has happened to Cudson. I wonder if him and Regan have made some form of contact, but Cudson now in 4th and lost 9 seconds to Regan in 3rd.
Yeah, last 2 minutes of this race has sort of thrown the gauntlet open on this AM as Phil Regan goes off as well. So this is given an opportunity now to Matthew Cudson, as you can see in the background there. So both the drivers fighting over the last step of the amateur podium. there have come a cropper on this lap, and is Matthew going to be able to claw down that gap between himself and Phil Regan in that last podium position in the amateurs? At the moment, it looks like he may run out of time, but Matthew's putting everything on the line here, going extremely wide into the last corner there to try and close that gap again to Phil Regan out in front. But I think time is not going to be on his side here today.
No, we said he's running out of time. He was running out of track on the exit of Murray's corner. Yeah, Cudson putting absolutely everything into trying to catch and gain at least a podium from the race. Our pole sitter, he was so quick in qualifying. If it was not for that mistake at turn 1, he would have, I think, run away with this race. But, you know, all credit to Jonathan Nicasio. He's done a supreme job. Back up now into the race lead. He'll be happy with that. I think he would have felt a little bit aggrieved after the contact earlier on. And Cudson as well. He'll be extra upset in the cockpit of the car seeing Regan make that mistake only a few corners after himself making a mistake. And you know, as a driver, if you'd have managed to keep it on the track, you know, you would have inherited 3rd place. So really feel for Cudson at the moment. It's a hard race for him, but at least he's managed to get to the end. He scored some good points. And another driver that's had it a little bit hard, you have to say, is Patrick Gannon. Gannon, you know, not had the fastest lap, but has had the consistency, like you were saying, Andy, so important in 1 hour sprint races like this. But, you know, made that mistake at the final corner, lost that time, and since then has been unable to catch up to Van der Nesse. So Gannon, I think, will also be disappointed in this race. I mean, who would be disappointed with a 2nd place? But I think it's that man on screen at the moment, Patrick Gannon. But I mean, you know, Krista has done a great job as well. We haven't really seen much of him, have we?
No, he's sort of been in no man's land as Scott, just aimlessly going around in 3rd place overall with all the carnage that has been going on around him. Not quite as much as Donington, but certainly is as we watch Chris come here around the last corner. Probably start his last lap at the moment. Oh no, it is race number. So this is the checkered flag. So this is Chris Van der Nesse taking his first win here at this GT Championship, and a great victory for him. Led from start to finish. Came under a bit of pressure there from Patrick Gannon, but unfortunately Patrick was pushing it a little bit too much. Scott Rister there, as you can see how far he was behind Patrick, just coming over the line for 3rd place overall, with Nathan Richardson there coming in 4th as well. So the top 4 really spread out in this race. But Jonathan Nicasio, you know, after his earlier incidents that he had, you know, has managed to keep it on track, keep his cool. Obviously, we saw him slightly come off a couple of laps previous, but didn't cause too much issues. Had a bit of a battle with Mika for that lead, but unfortunately I think Mika just buckled coming into Augustini, just went in a little bit too deep. But Jonathan certainly has been the man in that AM class that has had the pace here today. But that is another great 2nd place overall for our AM leader at the moment. So we'll be extending his championship points, because his nearest rival, David Chadwick, finished in 5th in class, so losing Vital Sports. So very interesting race, and it's one of them undiscovered gems on iRacing. I'm quite surprised we don't go around this track a little bit more.
Likewise, it's such a good track. It really reminds me a lot of an old school racetrack, like the old school, you know, like a Hockenheim ring. You know, it just feels like it's got enough challenge. Absolutely adore Snetterton, and would certainly be racing on it a lot more after this race. Van der Nesse, I think, as well, will be joining the I Love Snetterton club. He'll be absolutely loving the circuit at the moment. Other drivers might disagree. We've been mentioning it. Mystique, McGrath, Brown, Coldeyshaw, really not had a great race. They'll be hoping to forget this one in a hurry, but Van der Nesse just coming back round to the pits. I love seeing the cars on the slowed down lap. I mean, if anybody's ever been to an actual event, especially, you know, the British GT, everybody, it's really polite. Everybody has a little bit of a clap, and it's a really like social event. So nice to see that being replicated within the iRacing simulator. But Van der Nesse, I mean, what a race! Fastest lap, pole position, led every lap. I mean, that's the Grand Chelem, as some would say, and I think he'll be extra happy with that one.
It was, and I did Chris an injustice by saying he didn't have the fastest lap. He did by near enough half a second as well. He literally flew around there for that fastest lap, did Chris Van Der Nesse, going into his little special parking slot, the winner's parking slot. But I mean, he just had a great race. He was super confident around this track. Patrick Gannon there in second place, probably thought his opportunity was going to come to be able to get that race win with the two race leaders in the pro standings not being here tonight from Carwayne Racing. So unfortunately didn't. So we can take you through your results now. So in the pro standings we had Chris Van Der Nesse taking your race win here tonight. Patrick Gannon in second, Scott Rister in third, Nathan Richardson in fourth, Adam Hedgecock in fifth, David Flanagan in sixth, Paul Collishaw in seventh, with Chris Gooch in eighth place. In the amateur standings we had Jonathan Ocasio with a great win for XE Racing over Mika Garris in second place. Phil Regan manages to get that last step on the podium with an epic battle that he had with Matthew Kudson, who ended up in fourth. David Chadwick in fifth. Baron Glover in sixth place. Alan Mystique in seventh. Kenneth McGrath, after his trials and tribulations and spins around Snetterton, came in eighth. And Stephen Brown, probably a day to forget for Stephen, down there in ninth place, 9 laps down. But overall, I mean, the racing out here today was super clean. You know, did have incidents on the first lap, but that was pretty much drivers just spinning out wide on their own.
Yeah, very clean. Not that, no real incidents. I think the first one we saw was Ocasio being sort of knocked off the track. I forget who was who caused that, but Ocasio, I don't think will mind at the end. He got his AM lead in the end. But have a little bit of time for some interviews. Andy, do you want to take the interview with our overall race winner, Chris Van Der Nesse?
Yeah, definitely. Welcome, Chris, to the commentary booth, mate. I mean, a great victory. Obviously, getting first place in the qualifying and then managing to keep that place, even with the ever-ensuing Patrick behind you. How did that race go for you overall?
Yeah, I think it went pretty well if you look at the results, for sure. It was quite chaotic. In the first couple of laps, I was trying to see where the pace of everybody was. And I saw that Patrick was just quite quick, so I tried to hold him up a bit, make him use a bit more tires. And I think it worked out in the end because he made a mistake, which obviously you don't want to see, but I was running the long game there and I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, how was the Mercedes around here? It's a very big lump of a car. This is a very quite tight technical track. How did the Mercedes handle out on track?
It was actually quite alright because on the throttle you can really steer the car. There was just one little area where it was a little bit loose if you got it wrong, and it's a little dip in the last sector. But overall I thought the pace was really good, and in general the Mercedes is one of the best cars in iRacing at the moment.
Well, it certainly is, and it seems to be out the top two coming home are Mercedes. Brandon, obviously your championship so far has been sort of quiet, and now you've arrived on the scene with a big bang. I remember seeing you at Silverstone, nearly nicking a podium position on the very last lap, and Donington again sort of being Mr. Quiet in the hole. Is that been your sort of aim in this championship, just to keep it super clean and just trying to pick up points in every single round, good points?
Yeah, of course. I mean, if you're gonna push 100% every single race, it's gonna be you're gonna make mistakes, of course. But I was hoping actually to be a bit more on pace, considering Media Day went a bit better. But I've just been practicing a lot more for Snetterton now, and it seems to pay off. Yeah,
you can certainly see it paid off. You very super cool around there. We saw Patrick taking some aggressive lines to try and keep up with the pace that you were keeping. I mean, your fastest lap was near enough half a second quicker than anybody else's, so certainly shows and puts paid to practice. Before we let you go, Chris, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to, mate?
Yeah, of course. Teammate Dave. Unfortunately, he didn't have a really good race. And also Frida Sport with all the sponsors like Maguire's, HZ, ZF, and all of those people. Yeah, definitely. I do know that Davey's just recovered from COVID as well, so
That's another excuse he can use as well. But great victory here tonight, mate, and we look forward to seeing you in Spa in 2 weeks' time.
See you.
There was Chris van den Isse there, our race winner tonight. But we do also have Jonathan, our top amateur winner tonight. And over to you, Seb, to see if you want to have a quick word with him.
Yeah, let's bring Jonathan in. Jonathan, welcome to the commentary box. Really interesting race from your side. Did you expect to come out with your class victory?
Honestly, not really. I think towards the end of the race, I was actually just kind of hoping Mika would make a mistake, because we were kind of consistent, I feel like, throughout the whole entire race.
Yeah, and you know, so you obviously had a really, really good start. Managed to lead, I think, after turn 1 in the AM standings, and then a lot happened, so forgive me, but somebody made contact with you, right, coming, I think, after the long straight into Brundle. Did you think after that you know, the race was lost and it was all about recovering points, or did you feel like, you know, you could regain the lead?
So I was kind of distraught, a little frustrated, but I turned that frustration into focus, and I was just determined to get back up there, and I just kept trying to put as many good laps as I could. Mika wasn't too far ahead of me, so I had a feeling that the race wasn't over yet, and so I just kept pushing on.
I mean, it certainly seems like it worked for you, and you know, I think I was saying in commentary, you know, how that, you know, sometimes it's really difficult to reset after an incident. So, I mean, you know, how did you manage to do that? You said that, you know, you turned your frustration into focus. Was that easy for you? Is that something that you can do, or did you have to really work at it while you were driving?
So I'm a go-kart driver, so I've had to deal with many times of getting hit, and you don't have time to complain about it. You don't have time to deal with what happened. You just kind of got to keep going forward and keep pushing, and then deal with it after the race. And so I did what I would normally do in karting, and got a little frustrated, but then I was like, you know what, we still have like 40 minutes left, so I'm like, in these 40 minutes, so much could happen, so I just kept pushing forward and eventually got the job done.
I mean, that's such a good skill to have. I self-admittedly don't really manage incidents like that very well, so, you know, great job by yourself. So we move to Spa in 2 weeks' time. Do you feel that track suits your driving style? Do you think that you're going to have another chance at picking up another class victory around there?
I've never drove Spa on iRacing, so I feel it's going to be a good challenge. I feel like we could have pace, and but it's racing, so anything can really happen. But hopefully, can go get another win.
I mean, you know, good luck to you. And are you planning on doing, you know, we've got 2 weeks in between, you planning on doing a lot of practice, or you're going to do the same thing that you did for Snetterton, sort of practice the week before?
So this track, I think I put maybe the least amount of practice. So I think I may put a little bit more effort in the Spa, just because it's Spa and it can be really challenging. So I think I'm going to put a lot more practice just so I can maybe keep up.
Interesting. Well, thank you very much for coming into the commentary box, and congratulations on your class victory. And before we let you go and celebrate your win, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to at all on the broadcast?
I want to thank my mom and dad for actually like letting me race. And I want to thank XZ Racing, great team. They helped me out so much getting ready. I want to thank my karting team, Magic Kart USA, for giving me this opportunity as well. And for you guys for broadcasting this, because I'm definitely going to go rewatch and keep savoring this moment.
Well, thank you very much, as I said, for coming to talk with us in the commentary box, and congratulations on your victory.
Thank you so much.
That was Jonathan Cascio, of course, your AM class winner. Great race by him. Great race by all of the field, Andy. That was thoroughly enjoyable.
It certainly was, and obviously I think probably Jonathan is probably the only driver that hasn't driven around Spa. I think that's probably the most driven around track in iRacing history, so congratulations, another one for Jonathan for never driving around Spa. But no, it's been a really interesting series and an interesting race tonight. I mean, it's two real technical tracks that we've had, really quite narrow, opportunistic type of tracks to pass on, and in a couple of weeks time we go to Spa, which is very much the other end of the spectrum, a wide track, really long straights, good opportunity for pass. So it's something different that these drivers can bring to the, but that's in 2 weeks time here on Apex Racing TV and Finding Sports League as Finding Speed League as well. So you please join us then. But that brings us to the end of this broadcast, and thank you very much for Seb for joining me in the commentary box. Thanks for our main sponsor, Asetek SimSports, who offer all things sim racing, so head over to their website to see everything that they can offer to you, and for Finding Speed for putting on this great league. I've been Andy Thompson. I've been joined by Sebastian Boscher-Williams in the commentary box, with Samuli Kumo in the production box. Great pictures as ever. We look forward to joining you for round 4 at Spa on the 13th of August. So until then, it's from me, good night.